Unit 13 is logic and proof. So the first 3 lessons we're going to talk about logic, which is more wordy, and then we'll get into the proofs that include the math. So 13.1 is learning about inverse, converse, and contrapositive. Those are going to be taking an original statement and then turning it or changing it somehow to say something different. And so the first thing I have is an original statement here. It'll be in the format of if something, then something else. It's kind of like a hypothesis conclusion in science class. If this happens, then I think this will happen. So the example we're going to use is if the firefighters get to the house on time, then they can put out the fire. So this first statement is like our A statement. If this, then this would be our B. And to show it with symbols, they have an arrow going A to B is how they'll do it sometimes. And we'll get to later on, you actually see P to Q. All right, the inverse. The inverse is going to say if not A, then not B. So it does not turn the statements around, it just negates them. And that's what these little symbols here mean. If not A, then not B. So instead of saying if the firefighters get to the house on time, I would say if the firefighters don't get to the house on time. Then instead of they can put out the fire, then they can't put out the fire. Okay, so that's an inverse, is just negating both statements. All right, a converse, if B then A, it reverses the order where it says the second statement first, then the first statement. So I would switch this around to say if the firefighters put out the fire, then they got to the house on time. So it just switches them around. And then the last one is a contrapositive. It's like a combination of an inverse and a converse. So it swaps the statements A and B and negates them. So we're going to really use the converse statement and then negate both parts. It would say if the firefighters don't put out the fire, then they didn't get to the house on time. Okay, there's this corny little cheer that I have that's going to help you remember these 4. And it goes hypothesis, conclusion. So you put your hands out. Hypothesis, conclusion. Hypothesis, conclusion. So it's saying if A, then B. Inverse negates them. Yes, I wrote on my hands. So an inverse negates them. A converse switches them. So then if B, then A. And then a contrapositive is going to say not B, then not A. So no, you're not going to write on your hands. But so altogether it goes hypothesis, conclusion, inverse, converse, contrapositive. And so it'll get stuck in your head where you can go faster. Hypothesis, conclusion, inverse, converse, contrapositive. Isn't that fun? Spirit fingers, yay.